Crisis! This time on Earth 3. DC Comics has a history of titling things Crisis, and like a madwoman, I've decided to go through some of the pre-big Crisis, that's Crisis on Infinite Earths, crises leading up to it. I say some, I mean all. You gotta have crisis in at least one part of the title though. Them's the rules. Now last time we tackled the first, which occurred in Justice League of America issues 21 and 22 from 1963. And it was Crisis on Earth 1 followed by Crisis on Earth 2. It's a historically significant one for a couple of reasons. One, it really solidifies the concept of there being a multiverse, multiple Earths. Although at that point it's just the two, but it will rapidly expand. Even in that story, the Fiddler starts to manifest Earth 3. Suddenly the Fiddler cries out, "I've got it. There is an Earth 1 and an Earth 2. Somewhere there must be an Earth 3. If we can find the doorway into it before the Justice Champions find us, we can escape them forever." Another thing that's significant about this crisis is that it brings back the JSA after 12 years so that they can then be utilized more regularly. It introduced them to a whole bunch of new readers or just brought them back for people who had missed them. So it really expands the universe. Up to that point, there have been a couple of significant adventures involving those two Earths. The first, of course, being Flash 123, Flash of Two Worlds. But there was also Flash 137, Vengeance of the Immortal Villain, where Jay and Barry would have to team up again, that time against Vandal Savage to save the JSA, and that's where Barry met the JSA. And then following off of that in the next crisis, they all get to meet the JSA. Well, the people who are there, some people are busy. Now in that first crossover, which was about villains of Earth 1 and 2 committing crimes on their respective Earths and then swapping to live out their lives, which goes awry, because the Earth 2 villains have no chill and decide they want to still commit some crimes, the idea is starting to be seeded that this is going to be a regular occurrence. As mentioned, the Fiddler's already hinting at things, so it seems fitting that we would return to Crisis 1 year later in 1964. The JLA and JSA would start to have annual team-ups. And for this team-up, Crisis on Earth 3. And like that first Crisis, this one introduces some things that changed the DC Universe forever and are still in use to this day, time of recording. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's time to introduce the Crime Syndicate. Justice League of America 29 and 30 are written, like our last Crisis, by Gardner Fox, with art by Mike Sekowsky. The inks are by Bernie Sachs, so we got the same creative team, let's go. They do not bury the lead. The first page is just a giant introduction to the cast of characters of Earth 1, 2, and 3. So we right away get to see Superwoman, Owlman and his owl hat, Ultraman, Johnny Quick, no relation to the Johnny Quick of the Golden Age, and Power Ring. The proper opening, after introducing all the characters, is on the Flashes, 3 of them. On Earths 1 and 2, they're stopping crimes, but on Earth 3, Johnny Quick is committing crimes. I just called him a Flash, but they gotta separate him with his Johnny Quick name. After all, he's a dastardly villain. Maybe that's why he doesn't get to share their name. That and the potential confusion. The thing about the Earth 3 villains is that they have a problem. They're getting rusty. There's so much at the top on their planet that they don't get the chance to practice, and it's actually starting to mess them up. Next moment on Earth 3, a metallic net drops over the speeding Johnny Quick. It's been so long since the police have even made an effort to stop me that I've grown rusty. I've got to use all my super swift powers to vibrate free from this trap. He's vibrating. Surprisingly, that's not going to be how we're going to get to Earth 2 and 1. We also get to see Superwoman and Power Ring complaining about the same thing. And at this point, the narration feels the need to interject and tell us that things are indeed topsy-turvy. But wait, you say, these are not superheroes, but supervillains. Ah, you're beginning to understand that on Earth 3, some things are drastically different from the way they are on Earth 1 and Earth 2. The comic also helpfully takes some time to explain Earth 1 and Earth 2, albeit in Cliff Notes. On Earth 1 and Earth 2, things are quite similar. Some superheroes have the same names, although they may not look alike. Why is Alan's mask so small? Now this story goes hard into the idea that this is an opposite Earth, but it doesn't really do so in ways that bear up to too much scrutiny. If one starts to think a lot about the logistics of this world or the type of history it would have to have had, it starts to kind of unravel. It's the same as with a bizarro world where everything is meant to be opposite, but not everything actually is. There's some suspension that needs to go with Earth 3. Earth 3 proposes an alternate history that's very fascinating. Here are the examples they provide. But Earth 3, wow, history repeats itself in a reverse way. For instance, Columbus did not discover America. Columbus was an American who discovered Europe. Not only that, but colonial England won her freedom from the United States in the Revolutionary War of 1776. And it was actor Abe Lincoln who shot President John Wilkes Booth. It shouldn't make me laugh, but there's something about this image of Abraham Lincoln leaping off the balcony. It makes me chuckle every time. The point of this, rather than any kind of historical consistency or anything that would properly, fully interconnect. I mean, I suppose you could make it do so, but you'd have to do some working at it. It's more to present vibes. It's meant to create the energy of how this world would produce characters one would assume would be heroes, but they're villains. It's building up the atmosphere. The Crime Syndicate are going to be fleshed out more later on. There's not too much to them in this first outing outside from their names and their different costumes. Their genesis is fairly rudimentary, though some things stick around. Case in point is Ultraman being positively affected by kryptonite. In this case, it gives him new powers, which is how he was able to see that there are other Earths. He saw it with his new Ultra Vision, so he rushes back to tell the Syndicate about this strange new world he saw where the superpowered beings stopped crimes instead of committing them. The Syndicate also gets along fairly well in these first few stories. It's a bit noteworthy. Aside from being criminals and some light snark, they're fairly pleasant. You're right, we've reached a crisis. Here we steal everything we want. Our superpowers make it so easy, we've lost our fighting edge. Owlman, he said it. He said crisis. He got close to saying the title. The four super criminals swing around as their fellow member Ultraman joins them. I'll tell you something so new it'll curl your hair. I've discovered a way to get us out of the doldrums. Sounds good, Ultraman. Tell us about it. The Crime Syndicate are really interested in this Earth, and so Power Ring uses his ring to open up a barrier in the dimensional rift so they can kind of spy. Also note that it is far easier to travel between Earths in this story than it was in the last one. The Syndicate feel that perhaps finally they have found worthy opponents. Instead of staying sharp on Earth 3, they'll test their skills against their doppelgangers on Earth 1. Also, yes, they're using the Earth 1 and Earth 3 designators, which amuses me because it means that they just accept their placement as the third Earth. That's what this contest could have been about. Them fighting for title supremacy. Who gets to be Earth 1? Although based on the fact that that's where usually the worst things happen, maybe you don't want that. When those do-gooders called the Justice League of America have their next meeting, we'll give them a real test. I'm sure that with our superpowers, we will triumph. But on the slight chance we don't win, I have a suggestion. Every member of the Crime Syndicate of America turns toward Owlman, whose crimes are so brilliantly planned that they always succeed. Your super brain is what makes you a super being, Owlman. You've been giving some deep thought to the problem I can see. Yes, tell us what you have in mind. Based on that description, it just sounds like Owlman is super smart. They just really respect him. It's all that prep time, but no, he has mental powers in this. Persuasion powers. Maybe he's using them all the time to ensure that the Syndicate take him seriously with that hat. The others have similar powers to their Earth 1 counterparts. Now on Earth 1, our Justice League this issue are Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and the Flash. Snapper, Car, League mascot, Hanger-On, and eventual betrayer is there this issue. He does not have a college exam like last time, but he is still going to contribute nothing. Not even snaps. The League takes off when they hear of these strange crimes being committed by super beings who must have been yelling their names because they know them when they banter as they head out. Power Ring sounds like something I might have called myself. I'll take him on. That giant quick sounds as if he's just my speed. Alright, that's enough wit for today. No more banter, you're cut off. It's time for fights. Now we enter into the storytelling format that Gardner Fox is known for in these team books. It's something that he would often employ when it comes to fights and action in these stories, with some in the last video even said was called Gardner Fox story. And what it is that the same action beat will be repeated across each character / group that it needs to be. So if they're broken up into teams, you're going to see the same type of fight play out per team. So here we see it play out for each member versus a member of the Syndicate, who are each going to try and fight their doppelganger, but aside from Wonder Woman, who gets to have a chick fight, they have to fight others. For example, it's the Flash who has to face Ultraman, and the Flash is super quick to throw kryptonite at him. He got it from a museum. He's just like, quick, Denshaw to the death. The only effect kryptonite has on me is to give me a new ultra power. Now the format for these fights is that the Crime Syndicate all lose after for a moment seemingly having the upper hand, and as each is defeated, they utter the word Volthoom. I particularly like Johnny Quick and the Power Rings pass out poses. They're both very damselly and dramatic. One fun fight for me is between Superman and Power Ring, because Superman goes right for the Green Lantern weaknesses, first trying with yellow, then wood, and neither work. The best part of that for me though is that Superman's plan is just to hit Power Ring with a tree. His super mighty hands rip up a giant sequoia by the roots. You do the silliest things. Wonder Woman and Superwoman's fight channels some Golden Age Wonder Woman energy with that lassoing. But it's the fight between Green Lantern and Owlman. Years later, it has generated memes. People like to take some of these panels and use them out of context, because if you remove the context of the situation, they're pretty funny. They're funny in context too, but if you remove it, it makes Hal look like a complete himbo. It makes him seem like so much more of a disaster than he actually is. Within an instant. Next moment, by moving sideways, Owlman slips from the cell. Huh? Why'd I ever make those bars far enough apart to enable him to go through them? The Earth 3 criminal with the super brain whips out a device from his utility belt. Nobody can survive the radiating light from my Illuma gun. Nobody can survive. Oh, it's the Silver Age. It's fine. There's a code. People will survive, but the threat sounds menacing. But even as the spinning light ray shoots out its strange rays, this time I'll put the bars so close together, not even a skeleton could get out. To the amazement of the Green Gladiator. You made the bars real close, Green Lantern, but you forgot to form a roof over them, so I'll simply climb out. How clumsy can I get? If you've been on this channel, you know the answer is extremely clumsy. Stay away from bars of soap and yellow signs. Now, it's that panel there, the how clumsy can I get panel, which is usually where people leave it. And I can see why. It's funny. I did it in a community post to tease for this video. However, the next panel does have an explanation, and that's that Owlman is using his mental powers of suggestion on Green Lantern. He's manipulating what he makes. And when you see that, you realize that Owlman has really been downgraded in terms of his power set. That's terrifying. Hal is supposed to have this extremely developed sense of will, and it's just being manipulated, twisted in that way. This is a lot. Hal does defeat him and he Volthoom's, but the thing is, Volthoom was a safeguard. It was put in place by Power Ring at the suggestion of Owlman, just in case they did lose. I placed a vibratory power in each of the Crime Syndicate members' bodies, which would automatically hurl us and you into Earth 3 the instant we said the word Volthoom. Volthoom was the name of the Pungi who gave me the mystic power ring. Because it is magical in nature, it was able to defeat you, Superman. Take that. Now no one can write in and ask why Superman couldn't defeat Power Ring. Also, that means that we're 2 up on the mystical ring so far in the multiverse at this time in history on Hal, who's got a more tech-based ring. I like that they made his mask pointy too. Try and make him look more menacing. Now the Syndicate do battle with the Justice League again on their Earth. That is Earth 3. And this panel is just so many things. 1, it looks like Ultraman is spanking the Flash. 2, Green Lantern definitely survived the Illuma Ray. And 3, the conclusion they come to upon beating them is interesting. And that's that this victory doesn't really count, because they defeated them on their Earth. But on Earth 1, the Justice League was defeating them, and they determined that means that there's some kind of home court advantage. They don't go into what that is, if it's just the universe itself aiding the heroes or villains that belong there, but it's what they come to, and they decide that they need neutral ground. And that neutral ground would be Earth 2. Or Earth 2. It's just always minding its own business. People are just vibrating over there. Now the Justice Society notices that they're being spied on. Starman's cosmic rod picks it up. He gets to be in this one. As mentioned in the last crisis, they have rotating membership. He was not there last issue. He's here this time, and so is Dr. Midnight. The Justice League are magically held to a table, so the JSA break the spell briefly so they can learn what's going on, that the Crime Syndicate are headed their way, which leads us into issue 30, which is called The Most Dangerous Earth of All. I think we could argue that title though. Is it Earth 3 or Earth X? You decide. After our recap, it's time for the JSA versus the Crime Syndicate. And these battles are pretty fun, and not just because the Crime Syndicate start phasing out of objects inside their headquarters, but also because these combinations come across as a bit more different. They're not one-to-one in exactly the same way as when you have the heroes of Earth 1 and Earth 3 do battle with each other, because they're more directly doppelgangers of each other. So despite the return to the repetitive format, they're pretty interesting. Because when Batman is fighting, say, Johnny Quick, in a way it's a battle between Batman and the Flash. But when Hawkman battles Johnny Quick, there's a bit of a different energy. Even if some of those it's an alternate of an Earth 1 character remains, it's less direct, and that removal of one can make a big difference. These fights also get pretty zany. Dr. Fate just turns the entire Zodiac against Power Ring. He must be feeling a bit more taken seriously. Finally, a worthy opponent. It's definitely more creative than the tree that Superman tried to hit him with. Now the Justice Society are doing very well, but every time they actually win, the narration box says that actually that means they lost. Meanwhile, as Owlman leaps at him, Dr. Midnight hurls a special blackout bomb. Although I'm blind, these infrared goggles enable me to see both in light and in utter darkness. Swiftly, a pall of ebony darkness rises about the duo. He forgets that an owl can see in the dark too. Owlman just keeps getting powers. What can't Owlman do? Fly yet. Superwoman and Black Canary fight, so we're 2 for 2 on chick fights, and I see how they're drawn. I see you, Mike Sikowski. And the Girl Gladiator catches the amazing Amazon of Earth 3 in a judo grip. Let's see you work your way out of this, honey. And Superwoman drops with Black Canary, pinning her helpless. Now all I have to do is grasp her magic lariat and circle her with it, and she's my prisoner. I'll tap her 3 times, just as a wrestling referee would, to signal I'm the winner of our bout. Tough break, Black Canary. By winning, you lose. Ultraman and Starman's battle is probably the most epic. It's happening out in space, but it has an added layer of entertainment for me. Okay, tangent time. When one comes into a work can influence how it impacts them and how they read it. So the Ted Knight Starman I was first introduced to was the one who had a mental breakdown because of his involvement creating the atom bomb used in World War II. That was post-Crisis and later canonized more than once post-Zero Hour. The pre-Crisis Starman has no such qualms. He's willing to jump right to nukes. Because his cosmic rod can tap all the forces of the cosmos, Starman alters the nature of that massive meteoroid and sends it flying back at Ultraman. I've turned it into a nuclear bomb. I know the explosion won't hurt Ultraman, but it may weaken him enough to give me a chance to overcome him. Ultimately, it's an antimatter explosion that ends up taking Ultraman out, not this nuclear one. Also remember, JLA Earth 2, they're going to be from an antimatter Earth, but that's because it was the way to make it work post-Crisis, because there is not meant to be a multiverse anymore, so it's a bit of a workaround. Those characters are actually technically different than these ones. It gets a bit convoluted for a bit. Either way, for me, the mental whiplash of I am become death to the gleeful bombing is something that amuses me when I read Crisis on Earth 3. Now, this entire time, the JSA have been working hard to make sure that none of the Syndicate members say Volthoom. They were warned about that. But it doesn't matter, because by winning, they still lost. And in the next instant, they find themselves on Earth 3, dazed and helpless. This time my plan matters, that even if the Justice Society members didn't come in contact with us and gave us a chance to save Volthoom, they'd automatically defeat themselves by saying that they had won. With my power ring, I put a force in each one of our bodies that would trigger their transference into Earth 3. So if anyone had been humble or just said nothing, this entire plan would have fallen apart. So now the plan is, put the JSA in a special prison, go get the JLA, the Justice League, bring them to Earth 2, then fight. And they do. But on Earth 2, the Justice League are winning. They're using the same technique each time. And this time we do actually get to see them fighting their direct counterparts. Wonder Woman got to do it twice. The technique they're using is to overload their opponents by giving them too much power. Like Superman sticks Ultraman on a hunk of kryptonite that causes him to develop too many powers at once. We're years away from the drug usage overtones that they're going to give Ultraman and kryptonite. But it's something that still reads well backwards. Meaning that's one of those things you can see as a clear evolution of the original usage. How they take down Owlman is fascinating. The left side of my brain at which Owlman was beaming his thought controls governs my right side movements. But by turning my back on him, I'll receive his orders with the right side of my brain, which controls my left side. Then Batman whirls, and as Owlman steps within range to deliver a blow, by commanding me to turn around, it leaves me my left hand free to catch him off guard. And so, the Crime Syndicate are defeated, but what to do with them? Also, this proves that that's more of a suggestion power and less a mind-reading power, otherwise he would have known what Batman was planning. The Justice League are having a hard time deciding on the fate of the criminals, the Crime Syndicate, but not because they don't feel they should do nothing. They're completely fine with changing the entire power dynamics of Earth 3. They're just trying to figure out where to put them. The question is, imprison them on Earth 1 or 2? But each time they bring that idea up, the Crime Syndicate, they start to look really freaked out. But they seem to really like Green Lantern's suggestion of putting them in between the vibrational barrier of Earths 2 and 3. Also, I see you, Hal, pulling them as far away from Earth 1 as possible, huh? They do find out why the Syndicate would prefer the Void. Hal uses his ring and it communicates with Power Ring's ring, which is later just gonna be called the Ring of Volthoom. And what he learns is that the Crime Syndicate, the prison that they made for the Justice Society, is rigged to explode. If the Justice Society are ever freed, both Earth 1 and 2 will explode. They were not joking at the start of issue 29. They have not been honing their skills. They can destroy different dimensional Earths from a distance. They end up in between worlds. Hal defuses the bomb and just has it explode somewhere in the dead part of space, we assume. That's what they say. There's a story to pull from. He destroyed a solar system like the Phoenix. Now, to ensure that no one ever frees the Syndicate, if they stumble across them, the League put up a bunch of warning signs in multiple languages. The Syndicate looks so bored. Don't think about how they're gonna eat or drink or live. We'll suspend our disbelief that if you're in the barrier outside of universes, you don't need those things. You'll be sustained on the vibration. And so the JSA and the JLA depart. Until next team up. And so that concludes Crisis on Earth 3. Now, what's noteworthy about this one is the introduction of the Crime Syndicate. And also of Earth 3, which both are going to be vastly expanded. There's going to be so many more characters added onto Earth 3. They're going to give backstories to the criminals of the Crime Syndicate. However, it's going to take a while for them to become more utilized. They stay in that space between the worlds for decades. While they're mentioned sparingly in between, you get to see them in action in other crises. And it's in Justice League 207 in 1982, which is only a few years away from Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985, which means there's only a few years of this version of the Crime Syndicate being utilized, and they're not utilized that much. The versions that come after, while inspired by these original Silver Age versions, are going to be different, and that is the version that will go forward to influence later versions even more so than this past Silver Age one. And that version is from JLA Earth 2 in the year 2000 by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. That version adds in and cements some details that are still in use. And now the Crime Syndicate that exists are kind of this folded in combo version. But when they did things like Convergence, they did separate the two out to show that they were distinct. So basically, because of omniverse things, yes, all the versions exist, but the main ones used take elements from both the classic and updated versions. In this original outing, the characters aren't named, they don't have origins, but there's still something about them that resonated for some people. Also, just the idea of this bad opposite Earth. There was a lot to think about there because one could expand it outward quite easily. What about the villains? What about other characters? There's a fun element to it in the way they can flip things on its head and allow for different ideas to play out with the same templates used for the heroes. But this time they're bad. However, the Crime Syndicate are a creation that is definitely strengthened by their later usages. And as mentioned, when people think of them, that tends to be what they're pulling from. Less so than coming all the way back to Crisis on Earth 3. However, of course, this Crisis is their origin and the template. And it once more expands the DC multiverse. Now there are 3 Earths. And so it becomes even easier to think, well, why not 4? Why not more? Even though our next crisis is not going to be on a numbered Earth, it's going to be Crisis on Earth A. We were nowhere near the point of needing letters yet. Because of what it adds, this crisis is unique. And it also is adding, in a way, original characters, even though they are kind of villainous doppelgangers. It's different than some of the later crises that are going to add in IPs that were either bought or leased from other companies. Now, as for the story, while at the core of the premise is fun, it is fairly repetitive, and it ends up feeling a little stretched as a result. While it is entertaining to see the different combinations and fights, the formula is strong in this one and can make it a tad less compelling overall. This feeling is added to by the Syndicate having the same solution, and while the first time it comes across as a bit clever, the second time it's reaching a tad. It almost feels a bit cheap on that second run, the energy of someone changing the rules as they go. Although mileage may vary, some may feel that there's an excitement of, oh, how are they going to get out of this and how did they trick them? But the suspense is a bit more difficult to maintain over so many repetitions. Still, as always, it's nice to see the JSA and JLA team up again, and you got to see some different characters in the lineup this time. And it has panels that are a meme to this day. The Syndicate is a fun idea, and because they are different from the heroes of Earth 1 and 2, it leads to the idea that there's potential to really branch out in the multiverse and do some truly varied things. But the question is, what did the people of 1964 think? We read some letters last time for the last crisis, and they were absolutely glowing to the point that some didn't believe they were real. They were so effusive. Well, let's see what the people had to say about Crisis on Earth 3. We have some letters from Justice League of America 31 and 32. They're a bit long, but I feel like it's worth it. I love getting into the headspace of fans at the time. It shows that link, the things that are the same, some of the things that have changed. So please bear with me, because for this one we have varied reactions. Dear editor, Crisis on Earth 3 was horrible. It is one of the worst issues to date. You ruined the JLA JSA anniversary with such a poor issue. Why didn't you have new and original villains? The best you seem to do is to copy the JLA heroes and give them different uniforms and a villainous attitude. What does it take for you guys to see the light? The conditions that made our superheroes are unique and could never happen again. The repetition of these conditions makes our heroes seem less important. Another gripe is all these Earths. Here again, you are stretching the imagination. I ask you, would it be plausible to have 100 or so Earths and each one having a similar group of superheroes? Oh, Gary, you're not ready. Another gripe is not having all the JLA team present. Even though the mag would have been crowded with so many superheroes, it would have been more enjoyable. Oh, there's a sassy reply here. Whereas our readers found it no strain on their imaginations to accept the conception of multiple Earths even to having one of them give rise to super beings with villainous intentions, the above correspondent prefers to regard himself as unique as the Earth he lives on. Wouldn't it be strange if there were another Gary Hornback on Earth 3 who denied the existence of this Earth? Where would that leave you, Gary Hornback? Oh my gosh! It's just like today, only it's taking months. Dear editor, as far as I'm concerned, Crisis on Earth 3 and The Most Dangerous Earth of All were not respectively a superstar spectacular and the most stupendous battle royale of all time. The plot was not earth-shakingly original, the story is not destined to live in the hearts of all who read it for the rest of their lives. What did you give us in the August and September 1964 issues of the Justice League of America? Only a darn good fight and some great Sikowski artwork, that's all. Dear editor, Crisis on Earth 3 was a masterpiece of perfection. First of all, the cover was, in my opinion, the best to date. Gardner Fox's wondrous literary talents combined with Mike Sekowsky's ever-improving artistic skills made this a most enjoyable story, one to be remembered for many years to come. Take that, other letter. I was reading along at a lively pace, anxiously awaiting the climax where our heroes and heroine would lower the boom on the villainous characters from Earth 3. But alas, to my disbelief and consternation, I abruptly cited continued next issue. Now you've got me biting my nails and bemoaning the fate that induced me to buy the comic in the first place. But who am I to complain? I love a continued story just as much as the next person. And believe me, there are more pros than cons pertaining to this highly provocative issue. It seems as though everyone loves a cliffhanger. I believe that every year at this time you should have a two-parter in which the old Justice Society takes an active part. That would be a unique addition to an already superb comic. I could keep going, but I won't. There are other cool things in these letters, like for one, some people are asking who wrote these stories because they didn't know and they learned that's Gardner Fox and they're excited. Others are celebrating Fox's science fiction work, which isn't often as talked about, but he wrote a lot of science fiction too. So with all of that said, where are you on Crisis on Earth 3? Solid Crisis, or just noteworthy because it introduces the Crime Syndicate? As mentioned, next on the Crisis journey, Crisis on Earth A. As for what we're doing here, please share your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. Like, comment, subscribe, hype if that's there. They keep saying that's coming, but we'll see. Time for recording. Thanks as always for taking some of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.